welcome to the Strategic Success Podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Fricke. Thanks for tuning in. All right, you guys. Today, I've got for you part number 2 of the Steve Keighery interview. Now, if you didn't catch part number 1, you're definitely going to want to do that. We had a lot of great conversations, but we're continuing on with those talks now where we're going to talk about his philosophy around the value of debt. Now, us as Americans, he's Australian, we don't really fully understand this. And so with him being one of my closest friends in the industry, there's so much that he has taught me in this arena that I promise you, if you pay attention, I promise you're going to get at least one thing, if not more than one thing out of today's talk. Again, thanks for tuning in, as always. All right, guys, welcome to today's episode. If you did not catch the first part with Steve Keighery, you're missed out on a great conversation. You can go watch it still, but let's jump into part 2. All right, Steve, so we were talking about how, you started off doing a syndication deal as a limited partner, investing money in someone's deal, and then you realized really to get that infinite return, it would be quicker to do the BRRRR deal. Now, talk to me. So you did 27 BRRRR deals. So you're marketing to sellers and you're finding ones that met certain criteria for you, keeping those and doing the BRRRR, but you were still wholesaling.
Yep.
You were using your wholesale company as an acquisitions arm.
Yep, correct.
Right? So you're doing these, and so you're keeping these as rentals. I want to talk with you about that. Are you still doing the Burd Method right now?
I'm actually not. So I paused it in 22.
Okay. So almost 2 years.
23, maybe 20.
Okay. So over a year ago.
But I paused it for a couple of reasons. When the interest rate started going up, I paused it just to see what was going to happen. But it's not. It's like, just to be clear though, it's also not. It wasn't just the market. I'd bought a personal residence. I'd bought a whole bunch of BRRRRs, and I'm like, let me sit in them for a while, let them age a little bit.
Reposition.
Yeah, and it was so it wasn't just that I saw. It wasn't just because interest rates were rising. It was, there was other factors too that just portfolio wise made sense. But I didn't like, let me see what happens, right now.
Well, and so I remember one time there was a hedge fund manager that said, here in New Orleans, you run into all types of people. And he said, my problem with real estate people is they don't know when to get off the ride. And I think that that's a good point. It's a fair point to knowing when to do something, but then also when to pull back and reposition or wait to do whatever. So what are your thoughts on that as far as the BRRRR method right now?
Well, and just on like for me also, I think I'm not much of a trade. I'm not a trader. I'm not into that stuff. But I am into the psychology of markets. And we obviously IPO'd my company, so I have a bunch of stocks and stuff. So it's not even reposition. It's like take a position. I view things as
okay. Explain that.
So I've taken positions in different things through my life, in my company, and we were growing and we were getting investments. And in the early stages, whenever we got investments, you get diluted. And I would invest into the company to protect some of my dilution. So I'm investing in the company. Then at some points we started doing some investments, and it's like,
so like for some people that going over their head, it's kind of like at Shark Tank. It's like whenever you bring on investors, they buy percentage ownership, right?
Yep.
So it's like that, right? So you're like, oh man, I own less.
Yep. So
okay,
so there's a ton of position into it, but then it's like, okay, well, no, let me sell out of it because I'll actually sell into the investment. So I'm getting money from extra shares that I'm selling to new investors, because I'm ready, because I want to take a position somewhere else. I want to take that money into real estate. So I started buying rentals and stuff. So and then here I'm like, I bought a whole bunch of BRRRRs real fast. I'm like, and I'm like, I like my position. I've refinanced my money. It's infinite return. Let me sit in that position for a second. I've taken a strong position in real estate, in single family. I don't need to increase that same position, do the same thing. So I've got that position, just gonna take a pause and I'm gonna assess, so it's not reposition, it's just like that, it's a position. I'm happy with that position. I'm gonna get aggressive again. I'm gonna get aggressive again, but just taking a pause.
Right. And so I know you and I have done a handful of creative deals as well. And so that's in essence, so I've seen a lot of people struggle with the BRRRR method who've tried to continue doing it in a changing market. I'm not saying BRRRR's dead. actually just earlier this morning, I had a conversation with someone who's still actively doing the Burd Method,
Yeah.
right? And that's more than fine. There's no issue with that. It's just knowing a part of that is hard because it's requiring most people to be a good deal maker twice. So when they buy the deal and then at the refinance,
Yep.
right? It's the same concept for me as if having a balloon payment in a loan. It requires you to be a great deal maker when you buy the deal, but also when that balloon comes due, right? And so my only, I guess, issue with that, so I've never done the Burd Method myself. I see the value in it, but at the same time, I think most people struggle to be strong enough deal makers twice. And so I've seen people get hurt trying, attempt to do it. And so let's be clear, a lot of people think the only process for a Burd Method is an infinite return. You can leave money in the deal, in which some people would say that's a failed BRRRR because you didn't pull all your money out and then some, but that's an option too.
For sure, absolutely. So look, I don't think BRRRR's dead. It's definitely a lot less active, that's for sure, because it doesn't make as much sense. But I know plenty of people still doing the BRRRR, and it's more about like where it fits in your portfolio. So it depends how you do it. So I think you are right. Like I'm an infinite return type person. Like that was my style, and I like that. But you can leave more money in and cash flow more, and there's nothing wrong with leaving money deal. Most people buy deals with some money down. Like there's nothing wrong with that. So, but for me, I was more an infinite return type person, which means when you're doing that style, you can recycle money and you can build a good portfolio, but like it doesn't do a lot, right? Because my return is infinite as a percentage of cash invested because I've got zero money invested in it at the end of it, but doesn't mean it's a significant amount of money. Like I'm not living off my BRRRR rental. You know what I mean? So for me, the position. So I'm more economic, financial.
Yeah, I want to pull that out. What is your position with rentals? So you just said something, I'm not living off my rentals, right? So you've got like almost 30 rentals, right? I've got a little bit over 50 and I don't live off of mine either. So let's talk about that, because a lot of people think that having rentals, having cash flow, that like, oh, well, you have 27, you have 53 or whatever our numbers are. It is, oh, you should be able to live off of that. You should be able, as some people see us, we're, filthy, capitalist, this is if this is your salary, right? But with rentals, first of all, it's very hard for people to live off of them, especially with leverage. And so what is your position with rentals?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what my position is with my rentals, right? I think it can be different. Like, so it depends on your strategy, but for me, it goes to like my rentals and my BRRRRs I'm taking a position in the market, right? I'm taking these assets, I'm pulling all my money out of them, right? They've all got equity. I could sell them and make money. I could do like a flip, like there's equity in them. They're paying their bills and making a little bit of cash flow. What I'm doing, I'm going to sit on them because what I'm banking on is that the rate of inflation is going to be more than zero. The Fed says it's going to be 2%, right? They want 2% inflation. It's going to be more. I was saying this before inflation got to these crazy numbers. I was talking about inflation before people were talking about inflation, right?
Well, you introduced me to macroeconomics years ago, and because of these thoughts that you have, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to having you as a recurring guest, because I think a lot of people don't think this way. And so keep going with your thoughts here. Ultimately, when you think of rentals, are you thinking, oh, I just need 10 rentals and I can be financially free? Like, what are you thinking?
So for my portfolio, like I took this position, infinite return, got these properties. I'm gonna sit on them. There's equity in them now, right? I've got a good amount of equity, which I could always harvest, but I'm not going to. I've got 30-year fixed debt. In my mind, I'm gonna keep them for 30 years, right? And in that time, it's a position because inflation will go up. I'm not banking on appreciation. I'm not banking on all this stuff. But I am banking on inflation long term, right? I know that the value of the property will go up in nominal terms, in dollar terms, because the value of the currency will get deflated, right? So, but when I have, so let me put it simply. So if you buy a house and in 10 years it doubles, right? Like, awesome. Like I got double my money, but do I have double my purchasing power, right? Because if in that 10 years, the cost of petrol, food,
that's fuel.
fuel, oil. If the cost of everything else, the cost of dinner went up double.
Sure.
You haven't actually made money. You've preserved wealth because a lot of people go backwards with the money in the bank's gone down. So you've preserved your wealth, but you haven't actually made money. Now with my BRRRRs, what I've done is I've got that property, pulled all my money out of it, I've got no cash in it, and I've got this 30-year debt. In 10 years, let's say it's doubled, right? So it's doubled, but so is my taxes, so is my insurance, maybe more in Louisiana, and my costs have doubled, but my biggest cost is my debt service, my fixed payment, and that has not doubled. It stayed the same. The dollar amount stayed the same, and the icing on the cake is the amortization schedule has progressed, and now that so I'm paying the same amount of dollars, which feels less given now my rents are doubled and my everything else is doubled, and then the portion that is going to principal pay down is actually getting higher every single month. So for me, that's the position I'm taking, and I'm sitting on them. So I'm aggressive, acquire, get my money out, let them sit, but I'm not living off them right now. I'm just letting them do their thing and letting that asset go. And over time, the rents will go up. Like those things will all go up, and I will live off them in the future.
Right. And so you and I have similar philosophies with this. And so, and this is one of those things I want to talk about, the philosophy of real estate or the philosophy of business, or the philosophy of money. But this is a philosophy with real estate, is so many people say, hey, go find a house that cash flows $200. And if if you're looking for, 20 grand a month, well, then you just need to do the math, and that's how many properties you get. Right. Yep. And I understand that, but the reality here is, there's a lot of things can impact that. And most people who want to leave their job, they want to retire early, they're just thinking it's just really difficult to do with rentals very early on. Why? Because you need reserves.
Yep.
Why? You need, obviously to grow quickly, you need leverage. It is very difficult to cash flow to a point where you can live off of it with leverage, with debt, right? And so I often talk about my rentals as being like babies, right? So when I buy them, they're a baby. What I don't want is I don't want to depend on them too soon, right? So if I'm going to depend on them too soon, I mean, in the real world, if I was a mother and I just had a baby and I'm dependent on this baby to cook me meals, I mean, they're going to call, Child Protective Services, right? Mm-hmm. Because what am I doing? I'm prematurely depending on it.
Yep.
With my rentals, I need them to have time to stabilize. I need to have time to let them, mature. And so many people try too early to bleed them dry of money. And that's where I see investors get in trouble, right? They don't have reserves. They don't have, they don't allow money in the bank to build up, or, various things like that. And so I think that's important. One thing you've taught me, I want to highlight another part. One thing you've taught me is, so obviously you're Australian, I'm American. Yes, I've traveled. So I lived overseas. I lived in Thailand for a year. I've been to over 20 different countries. And yes, a time or two I've looked at real estate over there, but I haven't really gotten to the point that I ever thought about the financing. So talk to me about, what did you learn from real estate? Because, okay, so tell me about how you did not get started in real estate in America. You got actually started in Australia. Talk to me about that.
Yep. So I mean, I started buying rentals in Australia, and as I sort of got, like, my business is more established, I was getting a good wage from my business, and I had some capital I was able to get out. I started to buy some rentals in my area. I mean, I live in Sydney, Australia, the second least affordable city in the world based on income to property. Literally.
So the cost of living versus the wage.
Exactly. So Hong Kong's number 1, and Vancouver's number 3, and America's in kicking till number 9. And so in American cities. And
it's like San Francisco or something like that, right?
And where I live, the median house price is like $4.9 million. It's ridiculous, right? But there were better areas. So I decided to buy rentals. I never bought a house. So I actually only bought a house.
So you rented?
Yeah, I only bought a house like
recently.
2 years ago. I had a lot of houses and never bought a house that I lived in. So I was renting my property because the yield, like the rent to the value, was actually really low. It was a good deal. It's actually a good deal to rent these expensive properties.
Right.
Because
the rent $2 million house, and you're renting it. Yeah.
So I would rent there, and I would buy rentals in areas that had a better return, and they basically covered the cost. They basically break even, and that is a good deal in Australia. Most Australian landlords lose money every single week. We actually do rent weekly, by the way, but they lose money every single week, and they get a tax break. But property investors lose money. And they do it because it gains they're banking on capital gains, which mostly has happened in Australia. But
so that's appreciation, like the value of it going up.
Yep.
Because you share with me, your parents bought that townhouse that was so like one side of a duplex. That townhouse for what did they buy it for?
26K.
26,000, and it sold for what?
Yeah, well, they sold it. So they bought it 26K a fair while ago. You know, when they were younger, they sold it for 390K when I was a teenager.
For 26,000 to
390, and then like 2 years ago it sold for 3.9 million. And it's like, and it wasn't even renovated.
That's wild.
And it's definitely over 4 million now.
Yeah. So appreciation. In New Orleans, we don't really see that.
Yeah.
But in some parts of America, like, so next week I'm going to Tampa. I go there often to go see my mentor Pete. So some areas have seen, I don't think quite that level, but they've seen a certain level of appreciation. But you taught me something about, you know, the lessons you've brought over there. One of them is specifically about debt. Talk to me about how your, you know, experience in real estate in Australia, what did you bring here to America? Like, how has that impacted your investing over here?
Well, definitely an appreciation for cash flowing properties. Like, so that's why, like, when I came and you can actually get cash flow, it's not that hard to get cash flowing properties, you know? So that was like, bang, like, that's great.
The fact that you're not losing money day one. Okay, great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then the real important appreciation I think a lot of Americans don't have is the ability to get 30-year fixed debt. So America is one of the only countries in the world that has 30-year fixed debt. You could almost consider it government subsidized, like Fannie and Freddie buy those loans.
No, that's fair.
So you could consider it a subsidy, because no sane financial institution would lend you cheap money, 30-year fixed, when inflation exists. It's like
Right.
it does not make sense, right? But the government is subsidized and owns those agencies.
Or the government will back it. You know, for example, with a VA loan, I was just talking with someone the other day. I have a situation with a foreclosure with a VA loan. I'm like, why the heck is such and such happening? And we both just came to conclusion it's probably because of the backing that it got. They probably got paid out.
Yeah.
The lender got paid out. Because like the guy owed $395 in just last week. Actually, this was an appointment you sent me on 2 years ago in Covington. Guy needed to sell, bought a house. We were going to buy it subject to the loan, but the numbers were so tight. I'm like, sir, I can't help you. I gave him some suggestions. And one of my private money lenders actually just bought it last week. And I was like, I know this private. I looked it up. I was like, sure enough, I had walked it. He bought it. He was talking with the sellers, but again, they owed too much. And so then he went to the auction. He bought it for $220 last week or 2 weeks ago. And the only way, he's like, man, that lender took a big haircut, but because it was a VA loan, we know that the government stepped in and there were some insurances behind that.
Absolutely. And so in Australia you can get 3 years fixed, maybe 5, but that's like the max, right? So our rates are we call them variable but adjustable, you know. So they're adjustable rates, but adjustable also different to in America. Even when you get an adjustable loan, there's normally quite a lot of like caveats. It's like you only adjust once a year, once every 6 months. It can only
After this period,
it can only go up a certain amount with a ceiling, and like ours is just literally it's adjustable and it adjusts based on the decision of our Reserve Bank, which is the Fed equivalent. So think the Fed, right? So when a Fed raises rates, like honestly, within 2 days, you get a letter from your lender saying that they raise interest rates.
Yeah.
And it's starting now. When they cut rates, it takes a few weeks to get that letter. It's just, you know, funny that. But it will go up and down based on the decisions of the Fed. And you know, so I've been getting on my rentals. I've been getting letters like the rates go up. So
you had 6 rentals over there, right?
Yeah, yep. So the appreciation coming here to get 30-year fixed debt is amazing. And when you couple that with this economic view of inflation, like inflation exists, the Fed, they want 2% inflation. Like they want inflation. They don't, when it gets up to 9, 10, they don't want it, but that can happen as we've seen. So with inflation, if you can buy a property in today's dollars, get a loan, pay it off in tomorrow's dollars, in 20 years, the payment you're making, you're using a value of dollar 20 years later. Like it's the greatest gift you can get. And that's why I love the BRRRR, and that's why I love investing here, like, and using that 30-year fixed debt. It's an amazing wealth building strategy. And even just like as an investor, you can leverage it. The homeowners get it too. Just like the American people, if you,
It's an overall asset.
and I mean, there's a real disadvantage. People don't own a house. I mean, that they're really doing tough. But anyone who owns a house, like they've got fixed payments. Like inflation goes up, all this stuff.
Right.
Like it's a real benefit. So if you can understand that and appreciate that, like you should stack a bunch of rentals with 30-year fixed debt and sit on those things.
So there's a level. So I think Americans and investors, we're so used to that being a commodity that we didn't realize how great of an asset it is. And we don't necessarily always think of it as such, where that the debt. So Leon Johnson once taught me that if you put two brand new houses built by the same contractor right next door to each other, same layout, same floor plan, can rent for the same amount, is worth the same amount. One could be a good deal, one could be a bad deal, all based on your financing, right?
100%.
If you get 30-year fixed debt, even at 5%, 6%, over here, if you had, an adjustable rate starting at 4%, but it eventually would go to 12%, right? One would be a good deal, one would be a bad deal.
Absolutely.
So financing is the key, right? So as a creative investor, I've done a lot of deals, by buying something subject to loan, taking over, making their payments, on their behalf, not assuming the loan, but making their payments on their behalf. So I did one in December. So when I underwrote the deal, it was tight equity-wise, but it was an ideal property for me, okay? But it had, the PITI was 1,700. It was a 3.125%, okay? So I was looking at that, and I knew it could rent for 2,300. So it didn't make, $600 a month, but because those costs did adjust some, but it had chance for cash flow. And so I did that deal. One of the things that I loved the most about that deal is it had over $500 a month going toward principal.
Yes.
And that is the thing that I'm like, I love that the most. Every 2 months, another 1,000 gets, look, so that was a $280,000 mortgage. I just looked at one this morning. And by the way, Richard McRae and I jumped on the phone call this morning. I made an offer this morning on a deal to buy it subject to the loan. It was $194,000 with only $190 going toward principal. She had just recently done a loan modification, reset that 30-year, all of that. And so a lot of times I think, number one, people forget the value of time. Or to mention like that hedge fund from earlier, they get off too soon.
Yep.
So this is my problem with flippers. Most flippers or people who, they don't hold on to properties long enough, they never get the full benefits of time. So how does that play into some of your philosophies with, you're talking about having these rentals and keeping them for 30 years?
Big, like plays out big time. I think the amortization, so the paying down of principal, is the most underappreciated thing in real estate. People just don't factor that in, and because most people end up because most people neglect it. They end up refinancing too fast, end up selling it too fast.
Yeah.
Every single year, every single month, really slightly, every single month, a higher proportion of that same payment goes to principal. Mm-hmm. So like I've talked about the dollars, like it's you're using tomorrow's dollar. So every year, like that dollar is like worth less to you. So it's easier, but it's paying off that principal. Yeah. So a loan, you could be paying the same, let's say $1,000 is your is your principal interest payment. Like year one, and year 10, that same $1,000, just in year 10, that $1,000 is going a much higher percentage of principal. It's worth more, and that dollar's worth less. Those two things combined, just if you can just hold on to a few properties, like with 30-year fixed debt, long term for 30 years, you're laughing. It's such a easy wealth hack. I just think people sell too fast, they move too fast. I'm aggressive with acquisitions, but then my plan is to keep them forever. That's my plan.
Well, and I think that's true. So the 5 benefits of real estate, so you've got income, which is cash flow. You got depreciation, which is tax benefits. So you have equity buildup. We'll talk about that. You have appreciation, which is kind of like the Sydney stuff, the stuff greatly appreciated.
Even inflation is appreciation too.
Yep. And then leverage, right? The ability that, hey, if once you pay them off, you can go get another loan again, right?
Yep.
But that equity pay down, most people, they love obviously cash flow. Depreciation is a big talking point because you can help offset that active income. Appreciation, some people bet on that, right? Like in various places, but then, and then that leverage one, right? It's that ability to get but it's that equity pay down, that amortization. So for example, this property though, that I bought in December, I bought it subject to a loan. I'm getting that. It's like $5,500 a month is going toward principal. When you run your cash flow projections, we don't include that, but it is cherries on the top, right? I know you track your amortization, and I know you get so excited with it, right? Because that's also that's the snowball effect of that wealth building.
Yep.
So let's talk about this. When it comes to debt, how do I ask this? So obviously you love long-term fixed debt. Do you see yourself start doing the Burd Method again to get in some of that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. Like I said, I just took a pause, right? Because the BRRRRs get better over time. Interest rates were going up. I'm just like, took a pause. I already got a lot of equity in the deals. If I just let them sit for 30 years, I keep these properties. I'm doing fine with the equity. I could always sell one, but they're going to pay off. So like, I'm fine. So I don't need to add in more now because I think real estate. Here's the problem. The problem is people look at real estate as a get rich quick scheme.
Yep.
Like get rich quick. It's not a get rich quick, right? But it's absolutely a get rich slow.
Hey guys, Courtney, Fricke here. We've got Aussie Steve. And look, if you have a deal that needs to get moved, Southeast Louisiana, even in South Mississippi, we're your folks. We are the largest dispo company, really in the greater New Orleans area, even Southeast Louisiana. We have great contacts in South Mississippi as well. Steve, why do we move more deals than others?
Just we're very deep in this market. So Greater New Orleans can be really confusing for national wholesalers. The comps are hard. We change block for block. We got flood zones. We get a lot of hurricanes and the likes. And just a lot of the national platforms don't have the buyers on their list. So we are deep with buyers, but we're deep with relationships, which is really important in this market. So we love JVing with out-of-state investors.
Like I said, we do a ton of business with other investors. So go to homebuyerlouisiana.com/Courtney, fill out the information. We'll get in touch with you and we'll move this deal along.
Like it is like you, if you can hold long term and do things right, it's pretty easy to get rich long term. There's limited risk if you do it right. I mean, there's always risk and you can do it wrong. But like if you can hold and you got a long term view, in the long term, you can get it's pretty easy and safe to get extremely wealthy. And that is the amortization, all those things.
Well, but it's the reason why it's one of the main reasons, the majority of millionaires built in this country, a lot of them did on the backs of real estate. It's one of the reasons why it's such a proven, vehicle for wealth building when done right, right? Ownership is not enough. So that's one of the things we're talking about. Ownership is not enough. So buying the property is not enough. We're talking about buying it right. The numbers are right.
Yep.
It is getting the right financing, right? The two houses,
Probably the
one
most
could be
important.
back.
The fan is probably the most important part.
Right. And then the other part is, the management over time, right? All of those things matter. And so, but, you're right. A lot of people think this is a get rich quick. Jack Miller in his newsletters, he said that one of my favorite lines from them was he said that real estate is a game of inches and then suddenly. So it's like, it's a really slow drip and then boom, you get, so there's a level there. Most people can't handle the game of inches. They can't handle the slow drip. And that's why I think a lot of people, they sell too quick. They get out. They're like, they see that equity and they're like, I'd rather have that. As a trade-off.
So I think to balance it, you need a bit, and that's why, like for me, the rentals aren't really about money now, and I like that approach because, like, if you're making massive cash and putting in and owning properties free and clear, you can make money now. Like I'm not saying it's just my strategy. My strategy is to use the debt.
Most people are not making massive cash now, and like I had a guy who did that. He had a few businesses, and he was making so much money that he would just go buy rentals. Also, probably for the tax benefits, and stuff like that. So I do know people, but most people are not in that boat.
It's funny. I don't know if you know Mike DeHaan up in Spokane. I like him. He talks about because forget passive income, it's massive income. Make massive income, like wholesale flip, and then buy the properties. That's a valid strategy.
So I do think it's also really important. So I actually made a post the other day on social media where I said if I were to start over again, one thing I would have done differently is I would not have left the marina. Because when so in my story, I managed a marina. That's how one of the ways I got into the industry. I turned a marina around. So I was getting salary, benefits, all of that, right? And it was very low management for me. Like I was not micromanaged, but at the same time, I felt like it was, a golden handcuff. It was, ball and chain. And so I was not making the most money in the world there, but I had a lot of freedom. And like I read many books while I was there. That's when I was getting started. I bought my first property. If I could have do it all over again, I wish I would have stayed at that job longer, because having that stable income, the benefits, things like that, and then figured this out on the side, I wish I would have stayed there longer.
Well, and that's the balance, right? And that like Chris Rube from Lafayette talks about, like fast money, slow money, medium money. And so for me, the rentals, it's slow money. It's like, it's great. Like I do nothing, like, and there's like millions and millions. There's already millions of dollars of like equity, but like I just sit on that. Like I'm good. Like that's slow money. But you do need some money now, because I don't want to.
You can't eat equity.
Yeah, I could sell it if I needed money. I could sell it and get the equities out, right? But I don't want to, because I want the long-term appreciation. So you need something to keep you going, right? And I'm letting the rents and the profit, like let it support the surprises and stuff. So like I'm letting that sit. But you need money now, So what is that? If you want to keep it, a job can be that. Staying on the job.
Right.
You
I mean, our friend O'Neill,
wholesaling.
Right. Our friend O'Neill, he did great with that. He leveraged his 9 to 5, right, to be able to buy more rentals. And I think too many people leave their job too soon because of maybe discomforts, or like, just change job then, right?
Yep.
Like, but have something. I think too many people struggle because they don't have money to put food on the table.
Yep.
They don't have money to, provide some basic necessities. And so there's nothing wrong with keeping a job and letting it serve a purpose. Now, you can also jump into the world of entrepreneurship, wholesaling, flipping, being a real estate agent, stuff like that active income. But you have to overcome the big dip and the hurdle of building a business.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't come overnight. It took you how many months to get your first wholesale deal?
6 months to get my first wholesale deal. And just a bit, so it's funny because I believe in jobs, and through our meetup, the West Bank meetup, we sort of had this theme of lots of the entrepreneurs who have been successful that held jobs. We're surprised they had jobs.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've never had a full-time job. I left university and started business straight away. So it's funny that but I actually see the value in a job. So I actually think that's a pretty crazy move.
To leave your job, you mean?
Yeah, well, so I didn't get a full-time job. I had a part-time job. So I started business, and it was tough. I was young though, right? So I was young. I had like my wife and girlfriend then, but I could afford to be super risky, but that's risky. And you can do that, but I don't know. I necessarily recommend it because lots of times you get nowhere. I spent a lot of time building my business without reward. We knew we were building an asset, but those assets can turn to zero. Right. And you can do business is hard, right? And you can, there's many things you can mess up, but even when you don't mess up, you can get disrupted. Yeah. You can do all the right things and your business can go to zero. So it's super risky. It's a risk. I like the risk. I did it and it paid off big time, and it has way more upside. But I do think that to have some stable income so that you can, you're making good money now, allows you to play that long-term game of real estate, which has a really high probability of wealth, with low risk. So if you're getting money now, you don't have to sell that and move that. You can let that,
right. You also don't have to depend on it too soon, and pull from it. So let's shift. I think this is important because I think too many people are hearing the hype of leave your job, make 10 grand, wholesale your first deal in 2 days, whatever. So I think it's important to talk through those things. But let's talk through a difficult market. So that same property that I bought in December, I bought it subject to a loan that was, the PITI was $1,700. I knew it was going to go up to around $1,850 once everything kind of adjusted out. And it would rent for $2,300. Great. It is rented for $2,300, but because of insurance, my escrow balance readjusted. It is now, the PITI is $2,300. I have a property manager on it. So I am spending money every month to keep this property until that shuffles out. I can handle that, but not many people can. And we're seeing it in our market. So what are some lessons you've learned from this changing market whether it's with your rentals, your wholesales, what does that look like for you?
Well, I mean, the rentals were tough. I mean, everyone in Louisiana, particularly New Orleans, has the insurance issue, and insurance definitely came. And like I got my insurance renewal a while ago, and actually it wasn't too bad. It cured a lot of cash flow, but I was still fine. What was interesting was recently then the escrow adjusted.
Analysis, yep.
So it was like the actual numbers were fine, but I'd basically been underfunding it because the escrow.
Right. Well, and that's what I think most people don't understand. So when you have a mortgage, they require you to have a certain level of buffer in your escrow. And most people depleted that and their payments stay the same. But when they do the escrow analysis, I think it's once a year or twice a year, that's what happened. I bought this property at 1,700. They did an escrow analysis and boom, they bumped up to 2,300.
Because you're catching up some too. It's not even just the insurance, like it's the catch up, which should
And that buffer that has to be funded.
which should even out next year. You know what I mean? Like if everything stays the same, if it's catch up a buffer, once that buffer's caught up, it should go down to whatever the levels are now. But I mean that was tough. And yeah, I mean you need reserves. You need to, like, when you're running your numbers. I mean probably the rookie mistake is they're like, oh hey, rent's 1,500 and the PIT is 1,000, so use 500 cash flow. It's like, hell no, it's 500 cash flow. Like you got maintenance, capex,
Management.
and management, and like maybe this month you have a good month. There's no maintenance or capex, and maybe it's minus your management. Maybe you're making 400, cool. But then next month when your water heater goes out and you got to pay 1,500, well now you're minus 1,000. So you need to make an allocation to that. So every month you're keeping that. When you're getting your profits, you need to figure that out. And then those numbers can change. Insurance definitely hurt. I didn't underwrite the massive increases in insurance that we had, and it hurt some properties. But I have, I can weather the storm, and it's,
Right.
that's okay. I wouldn't. Some of the deals I have now, like on the numbers, I probably wouldn't buy them with the insurance now. But I bought them. I mean, and it's fine. I can weather the storm.
Well, so for example, that deal, I can weather this storm knowing that eventually the insurance will correct and it'll go back down and it'll go back to cash flow because it has a 3.125% interest rate, right? But if I were to buy that same deal at 7%, no, it's a no-go, right? And so that's something that's critical, going back to the value of the debt. And as a creative investor, I've been able to manipulate the market by buying with those, buying subject to, creating seller financing terms that are, favorable. And so that's been huge. And I think right now it's the ability to have cash in the bank to weather the storm. So some of my rentals are break even, some of them are negative. I'm selling a property right now that I documented on social media where when I took it subject to in 21, it was $1,100 a month. It is now $2,069 a month.
Wow.
$900 plus dollar difference.
Yeah.
Average rent is $1,700 on that house.
Yeah. Tough.
Yeah. So I have a contract on it. I'm selling it, but there's a level there that, like, how many months can you handle this? And I can't. When you have a loan, you can't choose to not have insurance. We're doing our best to manipulate it, right? Upping our deductibles, shopping it, doing all these different things. So, I mean, those things matter. So are there any other adjustments you've made to your investing, to your other businesses, your wholesale business, anything like that?
Well, wholesale actually funny. I actually got more aggressive. So
a lot of wholesalers were getting out of the business because they couldn't move the deals. There's plenty of sellers saying, hey, please help me. We're having a major insurance crisis down here. They're like, I can't afford my house anymore. I'm going into foreclosure. I need to sell. But then like overnight seemed to have pulled out.
Yeah. It was tough. Like it was tough. I felt it. Like it was tough. But and I noticed people leaving the market and good people too. And I'm a little bit contrarian like that. Warren Buffett, you want to be greedy when people are fearful, and fearful when people are greedy, and I think with being greedy, and I wasn't as excited to grow. I wasn't trying to build this big business with overhead, and when the market turned, I'm like, oh man, this is time for me to actually. So
what Steve did is you put the blinders on, like for the last few.
Exactly. I'm like, no, I'm going the opposite direction because it'll change, and there's good deal, there's good buying now. Because here's the thing about real estate, like it's like you buy and you sell in the same market, and it's never a great time to buy and a great time to sell. It doesn't make sense. Like the market's, if the market's really hot for sellers, it's good to sell. it's really hard to buy because it's and the opposite is true. So, right now it was a really good time to sell, but people couldn't find deals.
Right.
Right. And now it's reversed, but that's fine. That's just the cycle. Now it's a harder time to sell, but it's a great time for deals. That's when the real players come out. Which is
what we're seeing. A lot of them are coming out that, I sent you that one thing on Twitter X that it was for the apartment syndication where that guy was like, or maybe you sent it to me or whatever, but it was a guy who was like, I haven't really been buying a lot of apartment deals last few years, but like I'm actually starting to see deals finally come around. And it's like, now's the time for the wartime generals, like those who can operate in difficult circumstances. And that's what we're seeing is those folks versus, I think it weeded out a lot of people who don't have cash in the bank to weather the storm, who, were only here whenever the speculation was high, right?
Yeah, no, and it's like, it goes back to that from my wholesaling perspective, right? So I invested more in the buyer side. So we talked about two-sided marketplace before, right? So like I hired a disposition person to work with the buyer because like they're becoming more important. But the good buyers are buying, and I learned it from Vina Jones-Cox. Did a session with her about when it was thought recession was coming a while ago about like wholesaling through a recession because she wholesaled through '08, you know what I mean? And her comment was she did a lot of deals in '08. Right? There were different buyers, and that like she's like a lot of buyers that hadn't bought for a while came out because they liked it. They want to buy when it's good, and a lot of landlord type stuff. So for me, like I found the buyers are buying, but the good ones are. And I wasn't that person who was selling the deals for the toppest dollar to the rookie investors. You can make them more money than the rookie investors, but all the rookie investors disappeared. But the good buyers, which is generally guys I deal with, like they're still buying. So I actually invested in disposition. I invested in the buyer side. I'm actually like going harder on my marketing. So I'm leaning into it and doing well.
And you're having record months.
Yeah, exactly. And there's gap and there's a gap and people have retreated at the same time. So like, it's like, okay.
Right. And so I think that's key. So tell me this. This is a question I ask everyone. It's what is a lesson that if you learned it sooner, your success would have catapulted, you would have seen more success. So what's something that is a lesson that if you just, it was great when you learned it, but maybe you learned it later on in your journey. What did that look like?
Good question. I don't know if I have a great answer for you because for me, like everything's a journey and everything happens for a reason. Like I don't, I've been blessed in my life. I've had a lot of success, and I wouldn't really change too much.
Right.
And the thing I didn't know when I started was I thought it was going to be easy. Right? I had these visions like I was gonna be, like super rich, super successful, like so I was really naive, and you know what? I think that was the best thing ever because if I knew how hard it was, to build a business and how much longer it would take, like I might have hesitated, right? But in actuality, like it wasn't like so I thought it'd be easier. But then I kept going. So every step I'm like, I'm in now. I'm in. Keep going. Right. And then
you had been committed, yeah.
But I don't think I could have anticipated like the amount of success I did have. So I don't know. I don't know what
people say that you overestimate what you can do in 1 year, but underestimate what you can do in 10.
Absolutely, absolutely, and so, but I think underestimating is helpful. Can be helpful because you have these naive, passionate, and so I sort of I wouldn't tell myself I'm like think that Steve, it's gonna be easy, man, trust me.
Yeah, and so and look, there's plenty of people trying to sell you that like sell folks that it's like it's easy to get rich quick. It's the overnight success. It's the Lamborghinis and the jets and the Rolexes. But the reality is I mean, we've all true success is paying the price. And so for example, you didn't buy a home to live in for many, many years, right? Like and Jess, your wife, like y'all knew that there were seasons where y'all were suffering, not suffering, but sacrificing is the better word. So like, for example, you took to heart, so you've learned a lot from Kiyosaki. He shaped a lot but some of your philosophies, but talk to me about the lesson and what brought you here to America. So talk about that.
Well, Oh, okay. Kiyosaki. So I came to America because I left the operational in my old business. I'd sold a bunch of shares. I still got shares in the company, but I sold a bunch of shares. And Robert Kiyosaki's book, Retire Young, Retire Rich, was about when you sell your first business, you need to take a year off, right? And it was him. He got that advice to someone else, and he did it. And it's like, so you need to enjoy yourself, clear your mind, you know. And that's why I came to America. Came here. I came to New Orleans, my favorite city. So we came here to live for 6 months and just experience it. We had no intention of moving here, but you know, my intention was just have fun, relax, ground, spend time with family, kids. You know, because I mean, I worked hard in Australia, so
That sacrifice, that period of sacrifice.
and that's the people talk about work-life balance, and my concept of work-life balance is that like there's not much thing of like, hey, I'm fully balanced here and there, because I think balance looks like I go really hard, like working super hard, but then you need to come on this side. So like I took a year off, so I worked really hard, but then take a year off. You know, like you need to balance in that way. So I mean, that's what brought me here, and I think just taught lessons, and this did come from Kiyosaki, because Kiyosaki spoke about going to zero. I'd seen one of the tapes that you've got, like he spoke about him and Kim, they were down to their last dollar. They didn't have a hotel room. They literally bought KFC. They were in their car, and it was their last dollar. And it was just before cash flow quadrant took off, or through whatever. Well, I forget what happened, but they were down to the last dollar, and you're gonna be ready to go to zero. And I've always had that mentality. You know, when I want to start a business, Mum said, "Hey, like, you know, there's 9 out of 10 businesses fail." I'm like, "Cool, I'll start 10." You know what I mean? And I've actually been in a few situations where I've gone to zero, like on different times. I had success, and I'm like, I'll go to zero, and every single time when I'm at zero is like, boom, like it hits hard. So just that philosophical faith, back yourself, go hard, and
Burn the bridges.
it'll work out.
Yeah, no, I think that's important, because I do think that there's a point there that a lot of people don't buy into things, and you have always, my friend, you've always taught me that you buy in, right? Like when you are committed, when you're in it, you're in it, and so, and that's been huge, and so, and I think when it comes to something like the long play, which is business and real estate, buying in is critical to get the time, the value of time.
And buy in to make it happen.
Yeah.
Right. And that was actually, we did some like brand work on the DNA of our company, and like our DNA was make it happen. Right. And so it's like
figure it out, like do whatever it takes.
Yeah. So and it's like, cause it's like believe, buy in, but like you have to make it happen. Like don't people sometimes get frustrated. Oh, like I'm trying all this thing, I'm not getting success. It's like you need to own it. You need to make it happen. Believe it, go all in, but it's also on you. Yeah. You're the one that has to do it. Make those sacrifices. If you believe in it but you're prepared to make it happen, you will make it happen.
What did they say? There's that meme that said, yeah, you can say the affirmations, but you also have to do the shit.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
Right. So it's that idea, which you and I both believe in the power of affirmations, but it's also like you still have to show up and do it. Right.
Exactly.
It's like investors all the time who tell me like, hey, yeah, I've been trying to buy houses, but I haven't really been. I'm like, okay, well, how many have you walked? How many offers have you made? How many properties have you underwrote? How many times have you talked to a lender to see if the numbers make sense? All of those things are important, because ultimately at the end of the day, if you haven't walked a house in months, don't expect to buy a house anytime soon. If you're not making offers, right? You talked about earlier how, the value with wholesalers is like, hey, we might bring this one deal, but understand we like looked at 20, 30, 50 of them to get to this one. Mm-hmm. And so that's all critical. So man, I knew we were going to enjoy the conversation today. I'm looking forward to having you on some more. Talk to people. What's the best way that they can get in touch with you? I'm going to say social media, but website, social media, whatever. What's the best way people can connect with you?
Probably Facebook. I'm probably most active on. Hopefully you can spell the name somewhere.
I'm going to put it in the show notes.
My website's homebuyerlouisiana.com. You can reach us there, see what we're doing in the New Orleans, Greater New Orleans market.
Excellent. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I'm glad you joined us today. Steve, thanks for joining us as well. Awesome. Guys, make sure to connect with them. Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks, dude.
Okay.